Rob Melton. Today we're going to talk about NeMar. My grandparents lived on West Will Rogers, just about the location of the current Taco Bell there. They lived in a stately old home with a wide front porch and a chicken yard in the back. In the days when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, Main Street went from the track to track on Will Rogers, and there was virtually no business and few houses from the Frisco, or what they call the Burlington Northern tracks, west to downtown. No Pixies, no NeMar, no Reesers. Uh, it was Highway 20 is what it was called then. It was a two-lane road with a real pretty canopy of shade trees going up the hill. Cat Creek kind of meandered through the area and flooded with some regularity. I remember a deep rock filling station on the north side of the road there by Reesers, and I found a picture where they were selling gas for 29 cents a gallon. And it was kind of a no man's land on the south side, running back to Luther McName's junkyard and the old Perrier's Plunge pool, where the rumor was they had alligators. Luther McName's was famous for his junk that covered several acres. And it was said when you tried to buy something from him, he would, whatever it was, he would say, "No, I can't sell it because if I did, I wouldn't have another one like it." He was famous for that. And I think there really were alligators at a time back there. Uh, there was a long ribbon of sidewalk that ran along the highway, and it was pretty well frequented by OMA cadets. They were the OMA, the military academy, was on top of the hill. Most of their students were they called cadets, and they wore uniforms. They lived there on campus, and then walked to town. Most of them didn't have cars. At least first year ones didn't. Uh, Two businessmen, one an insurance agent, the other one a dentist, looked at that land, at that swamp land, and they saw possibilities. Paul Neely and Dr. Jack Marler saw that if Cat Creek could be straightened out, cleared, and deepened, then that worthless floodplain could be usable. The location was perfect for Claremore's growth. It actually just be an extension of Main Street. It would be difficult to imagine two people any less likely to be partners than Neely and Marler. They were just two people at different ends of the spectrum. Neely had a disarming smile that he'd sold thousands of insurance policies in Claremore. You couldn't get near Neely without being covered with ballpoint pens, scrapers, calendars, balloons, anything you could print his name on that said Neely Agency, so you would have it in front of you all the time. Uh, I remember about Dave Story, my friend now departed, remembers that his friend Ed Livermore, who was the first or an early editor of the Claremore Progress, an editor in the 50s, and he said about 51 that Paul Neely came into his office, said he was just a kid, came in and said he was wanted to run ads every day, and he wanted to run a tab. He'd pay at the end of the month. And said Livermore said, I just laughed. He said, we don't run tabs. We sell ads here, and you pay cash or you don't run them. But anyhow, Livermore said he walked around the corner to Neely's office, which was just a little office across the street from what now is the Claremore Civic Center. And he said, I walked in there and I saw the place was, in good order, that Neely was in the office talking on the phone, selling, that Paul was doing that. Johnny was sitting at the reception desk with a big smile, answering the phone, and had a cradle next to her desk, rocking the baby that was Steve. And Ed said, I knew these people were going to be all right. And sure enough, virtually every day from then on, for the rest of Neely's life, his picture ran in the Claremore Progress, just a small ad, but it was there every day. no, Marler, they kind of joked about the fact that he could think fast, talk fast, smoke a cigarette, and work on your teeth all at the same time. And that was pretty much true. I was a patient of Jackson, and he was a good dentist, but he always kept you entertained while you were getting your teeth fixed. Both of these guys, Neely and Marler, they believed that Claremore was primed to grow. They were willing to put their money where their mouths were. And that was kind of at the beginning of the 1960s growth spurt that happened about the middle of the decade of the 60s. When I was being raised, in the 50s and 60s, Claremore had a population of about 6,000, and that was just pretty sad, and there wasn't much growing until the 60s. No story about Claremore's growth would be complete without the story of NeMar Center. NeMar was and is a big deal for Claremore. Millions in construction costs, millions in sales, millions in tax dollars generated. We'd expect a story of corporate feasibility studies and backroom deals by the city fathers. Turns out, if indeed there were any city fathers, I've never been able to find them. If they were there, they'd all been sleeping. It was instead two young guys with vision and guts who made NeMar happen. Here's the real story, according to Paul Neely. He says it just happened back in 1967 that Marler and Neely, as young Claremore boosters, they went to all the meetings of the clubs, and they were members of the JCs, what they call the Junior Chamber of Commerce. They were at a JC meeting one night, and after the meeting there was talk about 9 acres of lowland just west of downtown, and that was going into foreclosure. Anybody knows that attended all those meetings that not much happened in the meeting themselves, but it was the talking before and after the meeting where things happened. 9 acres of lowland likely to go into foreclosure just west of downtown. Neely said neither of us had a lot of money back then, but we both had businesses that had good incomes, and we believed we could handle it. The partners ended up buying the land for the center at a cost of $25,000. Now it seems, really cheap now, kind of a no-brainer, but we must remember that gas at that time was selling for 29 cents a gallon. In today's dollars, then, the land would cost about $200,000. In today's money, Neely and Marler paid the equivalent of $20,000 an acre for swampland. Aces in the hole. Paul Neely and Jack Marler, these unlikely partners, had 3 aces in the hole. First of these, of course, was that they were the diversity of the pair. Both of them were well-educated businessmen, but Marler brought a never-ending flow of ideas to the project. He had just an idea a minute, always just one after the other. It was hard to keep up sometimes. But according to Paul Neely, their real ace in the hole was Jack's dad, Brycey Marler. Brycey was a guy with a dump truck who wasn't afraid of any job. He'd gained experience and contacts in the 50s moving dirt around in preparation for the Will Rogers Turnpike, and that was a lot of dirt. After looking it over, Brycey determined that dirt could be brought from the back of that 9 acres to the front. Along the Will Rogers there, they kind of making a strip center. They just pictured it as being a standard strip center along Will Rogers. The town's reaction was not positive. Neely said they ran into a lot of complaints, particularly from downtown merchants. He said, we couldn't understand that, since we weren't moving business away from downtown, but we were providing room for downtown to grow. Neely said that guys had their ears to the ground looking for prospects to bring in. It happened that one of the rumors was about Humpty Dumpty. There was a talk that Humpty Dumpty had been looking for a spot to put a grocery store in Claremore. According to Neely, while Jack was having lunch one day at the Linger Longer barbecue there on on J.M. Davis. He noticed an out-of-towner there wearing a suit. He said after the mystery man left, Paul asked Emery Conroe, the owner, says if anyone knew who this mystery man was. And Emery told him, said, well, that guy was in town looking to build a Humpty Dumpty. As Neely tells it, Jack ran out, got in his car, and engaged in hot pursuit. He chased the guy nearly to Catoosa before he got him, but he got him. And so it goes. If you build it, they will come. As has been discussed earlier, our heroes, Paul Neely and Jack Marler, rapidly overcame a series of major obstacles. First, they had purchased a piece of land at a reasonable price, due largely to its propensity to flood and the possibility of foreclosure. Two, with Bryce E. Marler and his equipment available, they had plenty of dirt to move forward off the back of the land in order to raise lots in the front. Third, they had Humpty Dumpty as a tenant. I asked Neely how they were able to contact other national regional tenants. He said, those guys who place stores must talk, because after Humpty Dumpty, we had a steady stream of applicants. Otasco, Levine's, Top Value Stamps, TG&Y. The center was going to fill back beyond their dreams, but that meant they could no longer move dirt from the back of the property. They were going to need the property to build businesses. They had to move dirt in. And so as the story goes, they went across the street where Reese's is now and the roller rink there beside it. They bought 15 acres over there in order for Brycey to have raw material to move the dirt across the street into the floodplain. No question now, Cat Creek had to be straightened out, and the whole thing had to be raised. We found an early NeMar ad in the Claremore Progress. It advertised 550 parking places available. Concrete was 50 cents a foot. Can you believe that? Neely said, Brycey could do anything. If he couldn't do it himself, he knew just who to call. And so it came to pass on a blustery day in 1967 that all the dignitaries, chamber heads, Warren Pixley, Ernie Smart, Mayor Dick Legate, Paul Neely, Jack Marler, along with representatives of the tenants, put on their best suits, dress shoes, ties, took their shovels out to the middle of a soggy bog, and with great fanfare broke ground. Once a dream, now the central shopping attraction for northeastern Oklahoma. So shouted the ad in the October 2nd Rogers County Observer. It was announcing the grand opening of NeMar Phase 3. Continuing to grow, new modern buildings, acres of free parking to handle 550 cars, 68,100 square feet of shopping room, a complete, well-rounded shopping facility for your convenience. The center was announced in 1966. Phase 1, the west side, was completed in 1967. Phase 2, the south, in 1968. And Phase 3, the east, in 1969 and after. Neely and Marler, masters of showmanship, simply borrowed a flatbed truck, covered her over with newsprint, bunting, and ribbon, and rented a public address system. They threw in the 1967 Miss Oklahoma who was there, and they got a newspaper photographer. And there you've got an event. 18 businesses had signed up and moved in this time in '69, including Otasco, Levine's, Humpty Dumpty, and a pharmacy, TG&Y, and Sears. I'm looking through the pamphlet of the pictures that we put together from the family that Neely's furnished me. I see people we remember. Some of you remember Dave Cooper, TG&Y. Everybody remembers Bill Flint, the barber. A lot of us played pool. O.D. Justice and Billy Williams had the pool hall. It was called Family Q Spot back in the corner. Warren Gray sold insurance at the Farmers Union. Lois Adam worked who had been at the telephone company before, worked in a beauty salon. Bill Norfleet of Otasco was there working. Ray Allen, and Ray Allen Shoes. I mean, it was the guy who owned the place was there in front, and I did a lot of business with Ray. John Nimbo, always the showman, had his Omega watches on display, and what he claimed, I think it probably was the finest selection of quality jewelry anybody in Rogers County. Dr. Paul Baker, we remember him, and he bought new equipment and set in out in NeMar, moved from downtown out there. Bill Hunter worked with TG&Y. NeMar has come a long way from those humble beginnings in 1966. It's a prime shopping destination for Rogers County, and thanks to the growth of Claremore, it's now centrally located. It's not swampland anymore. The shopping center now boasts 30 tenants, which is quite an increase from the original 18 in the 60s. 2 ATMs have been added to the property. The square footage has also increased dramatically, from 68,100 feet in the beginning to 123,377. It's doubled. In 2009, the portion that housed the old Goldie's location was torn down and replaced with a new building that now has Maurice's and Hibbett Sports. And at the same time, a $1 million renovation took place. That was in 2009, including a facelift, landscaping, and new designs. And I think it's probably been remodeled again since then. New retailers, we had the Bin Shop, Madeline's Hallmark, J&J Pharmacy, All-Star Trophy, Promote to Win Advertising, Stage, Bath and Body Works. Pennies came in. I think they're gone by now. Dining establishments, they had Little Caesars, Carl's, Coney Island, still a central place everybody knows. And there was a Cherry Berry that kind of came and went. From department stores, gift shops, florists, chiropractors, and nail salons, restaurants, banks, NeMar pretty much had something for everyone. This whole thing, as I go through it, I think about it as almost just a syllabus, just a textbook for young people starting out and dreaming of something. What if I could do something like a shopping center? What does it take? I kind of looked at this, and it was important. The first thing to note is that neither Neely or Marler came to town with a sack full of their daddy's money. Both of them were self-made men. They both were well known in the community. They were both hard workers. They both paid their bills. The first thing I think you have to point out with their success is what I would call connectivity. They got out and they went to meetings. And we remember that Neely and Marta were talking one evening after a JC meeting. That's pretty random. Came up that those 9 acres were available on the west side in foreclosure. That highlights the importance of staying connected in the community. If you want to succeed, you've got to be out there. You've got to make the meetings, and you got to come before the meeting and stay after the meeting, because that's when things really happen. It makes me wonder if either Neely or Marler had stayed home by the fire that night instead of getting up and having the discipline to go to the JCs. NeMar might never have happened. The other thing was visibility. These guys stayed visible in the community by volunteering and getting out in front of people. As I said earlier, for many years, not a single Claremore Progress was printed without Neely's name and picture in it. Just a small ad, but it was always there. And everything, everyone he saw had those calendars, pens, eye scrapers, notepads, everything with Neely's name on them. Another thing is integrity. And I think, particularly now, that seems like morals have changed, but it's important that you pay a special attention to this one because it's often overlooked. You just don't walk into a bank and borrow the kind of money it takes to do a deal like this. These guys have been out there for 15 years or more in Claremore. They were running their businesses honestly. They were doing what they said they'd do. They were paying their bills on time. And that's noticed because that's what it takes if you're going to expect to one day borrow money that amounts to anything. The next one, for lack of a better word, I just call it audacity. Some people call it nerve. Some people call it guts. Some people call it other things. But its importance can't be overlooked by young people who want to get in ahead. These guys were willing to drag bankers and city officials out to a swamp and convince them to see what was possible. They were willing to stake their reputations and their bankrolls. I wonder how many different times, how different this would have turned out if Martyr hadn't chased that guy from Conroe's barbecue to Catoosa to talk him into looking at their place for the Humpty Dumpty. How many of us would have the audacity, nerve, or guts to do that? Another thing is tenacity. There were a lot of obstacles to overcome, and they are with any project of scale. These guys were keeping their eye on the ball all the time. Those 15 years spent selling insurance and fixing teeth were necessary for a deal like this to happen someday. Those JC meetings and 100 others were necessary. The worries about Cat Creek were necessary. But finally it came together, and through NeMar Center, the young entrepreneurs enriched both themselves and their community. Our hearts are off to them. Our hats are off to them, rather. Special thanks to the Neely family for providing the materials for this story. I knew and have known Jack Martyr and Paul Neely for most of my life. From the beginning, I looked up to them, particularly Neely, as I knew him better. People who are winners, both in the business world and in their community. People who have to be admired and people who inspired young people for years to come. That's the end of the NeMar story. Rob Melton signing off.